Dean and Tyler Listle are registered investment advisor representatives. Investment advisory services offered through Brokers International Financial Services, LLC, member SIPC. Brokers International Financial Services, LLC, and Secure Retirement Solutions, LLC are not affiliated companies.
It's time for Secure Retirement Solutions with your hosts, Dean and Tyler Listle, fully licensed retirement specialists from Secure Retirement Solutions in Green Bay. Now, here are your hosts, Dean and Tyler.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us today. Tyler and I will discuss topics that affect your retirement, such as investments, income planning, Social Security, and much more. How are you this morning, Tyler?
Good morning, Dean. I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Good, thank you. We've got a good show planned. We're going to talk about frequently asked investment and retirement questions. This is one of our more popular topics when we start talking about questions that we hear in the office quite a bit because they are relatively common. So we're going to talk about those, and really the first one we're going to kick off with is Social Security. It tends to be one of the hottest ones. We're going to make one assumption here first when we start talking about it, that Social Security will be solvent. A lot of things go into the equation for solvency on Social Security. Just understand that if you're looking towards retirement or you are retired, when you see reports come out that the unemployment has gone down and the employment rate has gone up, that's a good thing for you because more people are putting Social Security benefits into the trust fund. So that's good for you. But when it comes to Social Security, the question we hear most often is, a lot of people will think that, you know what, I am just going to retire and live off of Social Security alone. And unfortunately, that typically doesn't work out real well. And part of the reason is you better have all of your debt paid off because your Social Security benefit is probably going to be weaker than you anticipate in order to take care of all of your needs in retirement. As an average, $1,369 tends to be an average benefit of Social Security for a retiree, and that equals to about $16,428 per year. And the way Social Security works is you typically get a cost of living increase except for the years when you don't. And what I mean by that is it is all over the place. Sometimes you'll get a cost of living increase, sometimes you won't. So you really can't rely on the cost of living increase either. And unfortunately, many times when the cost of living does increase on your Social Security, sounds good, but unfortunately your Medicare might go up too, your Part B. So really just relying on Social Security alone is not good planning. Unfortunately, some people fall on hard times and they have to rely on that. We do understand that. But if you have control, 10 years, 5 years, 3 years before your retirement, we recommend you get started savings, putting some money away. But to rely on Social Security alone is probably not a good recipe. Tyler, what else am I missing here when it comes to Social Security?
Yeah, Dean, now according to the Social Security Administration, Social Security benefits represent only 33% of the income of the elderly. So really, 67% is built up based on retirement investments, part-time or full-time work, or help from their family. So really, when you look at it, only a third of the income right now is people's Social Security. Like I said, that other 67% or two-thirds are coming from other sources. So really, that shows us right there that Social Security usually isn't going to be enough. Now, there are people who can live off of Social Security alone and be just fine, but that's all based on what your expenses are. Now, obviously what we recommend then is to start saving through an employer-sponsored plan that you have through work, or an IRA outside of work, or even better, a Roth IRA. And we'll dive into those accounts a little bit later on in the show. But one thing to keep in mind, regardless if you only have Social Security or if you have other investments as well, one factor to consider is when you file for Social Security, because when you file will determine what kind of benefit you get. Now, the earliest you can file is at age 62, and the latest is at age 70. So between 62 and 70, your benefit grows each year that you delay. Now, for example, if your benefit is $1,200 at age 62, you could wait until age 67 and get around $1,560 per month. So it may not seem like a lot, but $1,200 at age 62 comes out to be about $14,400 per year versus almost $19,000 at age 67 per year. So that's $5,000 per year more that you'd be getting if you waited to file, and over the course of your retirement, $5,000 in 1 year can really add up. So obviously we encourage people to start saving through an employer-sponsored plan, an IRA, a Roth IRA, in addition to Social Security, because like Dean said, most people living off Social Security alone is going to be pretty tough.
Yeah, I agree with that. So that's one of the things that we address when we talk about Social Security. Let's get some other things going. And also remember, too, when it comes to Social Security, Tyler and I do not work for the Social Security Administration, but we do model out your Social Security options when you retire. That's something we advocate. We recommend to anybody and everybody, have your Social Security modeled out. Have a financial plan put together. We put together complimentary financial plans for anybody who comes through the front door. Very important for them to come in and have that done, because some people will hear, radio, TV hosts reading a book online. They'll say, well, I read that you should not take Social Security until you're 70 years old or 66 or whatever the number is. Realize that your Social Security benefit is a matter that comes between the administration and you. And what you need to do is look at your own personal situation. For instance, is it really in your best interest to file at 70 years old if you retire at 62 or 60 years old and have very little retirement investment set aside? You're typically going to run those down significantly. You might borrow in order to go pay for debt. So you really have to look at filing for Social Security earlier in a situation like that. And remember, we always recommend, there's two reasons for filing Social Security: because you have to or because you want to. Everything else really falls into those two reasons for filing Social Security. Okay, the next thing we're going to talk about is, if I invest up to my 401k match, will I have enough to retire? Well, first of all, congratulations for investing up to a match. That's wonderful. It's something that we recommend or more. But it really comes down to how much you make in payroll. For instance, if your employer gives you a 2% match and then you put in 2%, so a total of 4%, but you make $28,000 a year, chances are that 4% of your salary is not going to take you real far in retirement, compared to if you had the same match of 2% and your employer gives you 2% for a 4% total contribution, but your payroll is $90,000 a year. So you can see that it really depends on your payroll. Many times, some of our clients who are the most comfortable in retirement actually didn't make as much in payroll as some other clients. It's just that they saved more. They started earlier and they saved more, or when they did start later, they were more aggressive. So really, it comes down to a match. Tyler has a theory here that we explain to our clients when it comes to matching a 401k. Tyler, let's take our listeners through that.
Yeah, Dean, and when we get that question, when people ask if they invest up to their 401k match, will they have enough to retire? Well, really, ultimately, that's going to depend upon what your expenses are and stuff like that. But I tell people, first and foremost, as long as you contribute up to the match, that's going to be the first thing, because that's free money. If your employer matches 5%, you should put 5% of your own salary, because then they'll give you a free 5% of your salary into your retirement account. So at the very least, try and shoot for the match. However, we like to see people where they don't just settle for the match. Ultimately, what we want you to do is build up to 15% of your income for retirement. So again, that doesn't happen overnight, but really, if you have a 5% match, we'd still like to see you get to 15% of your income. That's kind of the rule of thumb. And oftentimes we have a lot of younger clients who come in and they say, I'm 30, 35, 40 years old right now, and I'm not planning on retiring for another 20 or 30 years. How in the world am I going to know how much I need at retirement? Well, I tell people, as long as you can aim for 15% of your income towards retirement, you should be just fine. That's the first rule of thumb, especially when people are younger. So then the next question becomes, okay, if I'm going to try and work my way up to 15% of income, then I need to know, what do I even invest in? What kind of accounts do I choose? How do I go about doing that? So really, we have a methodology that we use where if you have a 401k, a 403b, a 457, any type of employer-sponsored plan through work, then the first place you're going to want to go is into that plan up to the match. So go up to the match in your 401k. Then once you hit the match, go outside of that into a Roth IRA and max out your Roth IRA. Now, with a Roth account, you can put up to $5,500 per year in there. However, if you're 50 or older, you can put an extra $1,000 in, totaling $6,500 per year. So go up to the match in the 401k, go outside to the Roth IRA. Then if you still haven't hit that 15% of income, go back to your 401k then and finish up that way. Now, if you have a Roth 401k, then do the full 15% in the Roth portion. As long as you have good investment options within your 401k, you want to make sure you have an advisor review those. Oftentimes, for all of our clients, we'll sit down and we'll review their current 401ks at work and make sure that they are in the correct allocations. And then if some people work for an employer that doesn't offer an employer-sponsored plan, if that's the case, go straight to the Roth IRA. Then outside of that, do a non-qualified account. So that's an account that you open on your own. You can invest in various stocks, bonds, mutual funds, things of that nature. So that's really how we structure that. And again, many people, they invest only up to the match, which is good, but try and take that a step further and reach that 15% rule of thumb. And one other question that we get often is people say they have a 5% match. Is it okay if they contribute 10% of their income? So that's totaling 15%. Well, that can be okay, but ideally you still want to contribute 15% of your own income to be safe. Then the extra 5% is just kind of a cherry on top, so to speak.
Okay. Good points, Tyler. Okay, the next thing we're going to talk about, we hear a lot of banter in our office is, I'd like to work in retirement. I'm going to make the numbers work by retiring from my full-time job, and then I'm going to take on a part-time job. That sounds good in theory. Typically, we have three schools of thought when it comes to retirement. Many times people will retire because the numbers work out for them. We run a financial plan, the numbers work out, they slide right into retirement. Their standard of living really doesn't change all that much. That is a very good situation for most people. Second one is the numbers don't really work out, but I can't stand my job and I hate my boss. Okay, those are situations where I want to retire from a full-time job and start working part-time. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. You think you might be more marketable than you really are if you quit your full-time job because you don't care for the company or your boss or coworkers. Many times you say, why don't you go back and address it with somebody, see if you can take care of those things at work, because if you leave because you don't care for your employer or maybe coworkers, many times 3, 4, 5 months down the line, you find out you need additional income. That part-time job isn't doing it. And unfortunately, your old employer is not going to hire you back. Okay, you typically cannot get that job back. And then the last reason we tend to see is, unfortunately, health issues come into play and you just can't conduct that job anymore. So those are the three situations we see a lot. But to rely specifically on a part-time job in retirement to make ends meet, many times it backfires on you because, again, that part-time job isn't what you really anticipated. Sometimes you're restricted on how much you can make, especially if you file for Social Security. If you're younger than your full retirement age of 66 or 67 years old and you file Social Security at 62, let's say, you are restricted with how much income you can make between 62 and your full retirement age because of your Social Security benefit. And if you make too much income, what happens is half of your Social Security benefit could be penalized. Okay, so you really have to be careful just relying on a part-time job. However, we also like it when people do work part-time because it's a reason for getting out of bed in the morning. Unfortunately, those people who retire and just look to wear out a lazy boy typically don't do well in retirement. So when it comes to retirement, you have to have a reason for getting up and moving around each day. Sometimes it's a volunteer job. Sometimes it is a part-time job. Sometimes it's working at the church or wherever it may be. So don't specifically rely on a part-time job. It's a good opportunity, but don't make it part of your retirement plan.
Yeah, Dean. And one thing I wanted to add in there is that we get this question quite a bit. Well, people actually, they'll just say, when we take them through their financial plan, they'll say, I'm planning on working into my 70s, maybe even my 80s, just because they kind of realize that they hadn't saved up enough in retirement for them to be able to retire. So they tell us, okay, I'm going to work throughout my retirement. And sure, that may sound good, but in fact, there was a 2017 survey that was done that found out that while 79% of working Americans are planning to work in retirement. Only 29% of retirees were actually able to do so. So really, not even 3 out of every 10 retirees were able to even work in retirement. So again, you don't really want to bet your future on those odds. And according to AARP, it's estimated that a 65-year-old couple who is retired will need $240,000 to cover future medical costs. So that doesn't really bode too well for someone planning to work through retirement, as our bodies break down when we don't really want them to at that point. So everything from unexpected layoffs to health issues to other family illnesses, they could prevent you from working throughout retirement. So you really don't want to bank on that. And how you can counter that is by saving enough in retirement accounts in the first place. So again, you want to save early and often so that you don't have to worry about working when you want to retire.
Okay, good point, Tyler. Before we go on to our next topic, we're going to take a quick break.
You're listening to Dean and Tyler Listle, investment advisors with Secure Retirement Solutions located on Allied Street in Green Bay. For a complimentary review of your current investments, or if you have questions, please call them at 920-347-9888 or go to their website at srsplans.com.
Okay, the next topic we're going to talk about is, this is a question we hear a lot, is will Medicare alone cover my medical expenses? The quick answer is no. Okay, and what we mean by that is Medicare itself, you've got Medicare Part A, Part B, and you have supplements and advantage plans. And again, as I stated with Social Security, that we don't work for the Social Security Administration. We also don't work for Medicare. However, we carry our license for health insurance and Medicare supplements. You need to, in order to explain the process to those people retiring and coming close to Medicare age. But let's understand one thing. Medicare itself is really good coverage, but it doesn't cover everything. So for instance, Medicare Part A, Medicare Part B will take care of about 80% of your medical needs once you're 65 years old and older and you are on Medicare, but it will not take care of long-term care costs. And that's the one that I think catches most people by surprise. They believe that Medicare will take care of long-term care. Now, don't get Medicare and Medicaid mixed up. Medicaid is typically lower income benefit. Medicare is not that. But what happens with long-term care costs, a lot of people are caught off guard because they think Medicare takes care of it. They go into retirement thinking that way. Unfortunately, they might need some long-term care needs and they have to pay for it out of pocket because they don't have either a long-term care insurance policy, which, by the way, are very expensive. And especially after you get into your retirement years, if you're looking to get a long-term care policy at that particular time, chances are you probably won't qualify because it is an insurance product that goes through an underwriting process. So if you're not in very good health, chances are you won't get it. Even if you are in good health and you're over 60 years old, you're going to pay a substantial amount of money for a long-term care policy. Okay, so what do you do if you made that mistake not knowing that Medicare doesn't take care of long-term care and you don't have a long-term care policy? We tell our clients, we tell anybody we talk to, is go scrutinize your life insurance policy, because there are a number of life insurance policies that many people carry that have what's called accelerated death benefits. And what that is your benefit could be a death benefit of $100,000, let's say. And if you have a rider on there that's called an accelerated death benefit, it'll pay sometimes up to 75% of the death benefit while you're still living if you have a terminal illness or you need nursing home care or cannot conduct, let's say, 2 of the 6 activities of daily living. So it will help in a situation like that. I personally have that in place for myself and my wife. So I use that for some long-term care coverage should we need it. Tyler, and as far as other expenses too, what a lot of people don't understand is that there are sometimes some deductibles and copays, and again, the long-term care that is not covered under Medicare. And as you said earlier, the survey by AARP claims that most people are going to need about $240,000 for medical costs in their retirement. It seems excessive, but they're just looking at actual numbers here. Anything else I'm missing, Tyler, when it comes to medical expenses?
Yeah, and Dean, when we get the question, people ask it pretty often, will Medicare alone cover my medical expenses? And a lot of people don't know this, but just as you had mentioned earlier, that Part A and Part B cover only approximately 80% of healthcare costs. And some people that we talked to said, well, 80%, that's good enough for me. Well, really, when you have a surgery done that costs you $100,000, they cover 80%. 20% of $100,000 is still going to be $20,000 out of pocket that you have to pay the premiums for. Good luck with that. So that's where you want to make sure that you're getting a Medicare supplement as well to cover that gap, to make sure you don't have that 20% that's left uncovered. The other thing is, you had mentioned, Dean, the biggest health expense in retirement is long-term care. And the median annual cost for care at an assisted living facility is $45,000. And that's based on a Genworth research report. Now, a private room at a nursing home costs more than double that at $97,000. And on average, 52% of those turning 65 today will need long-term care of some kind. So really, that's 1 out of every 2 people who are turning 65 is going to need some type of long-term care. And unless you have long-term care insurance or a term life policy with an accelerated death benefit or long-term care rider on it, then you're going to be on the hook for that, and that can easily drain your retirement savings that you had built up for all these years. So really, you want to make sure that you have some type of, whether it's long-term care, term life insurance with an accelerated death benefit. Then the other thing to do is to kick your retirement savings into high gear, so that way you can try and combat some of those expenses should they arise over time.
Okay, good points, Tyler. Another one we hear question or inquiry is, it's just too late for me to start saving at this point. I'm just going to rely on Social Security. It's just too late to start. Well, first of all, it's never too late to start. It's also never too early to start. Compounding interest is on your side the earlier you start. But even if you started 2 months prior to retirement, you've got 2 months worth of savings. So, I mean, you need to get started. Try to, put away as much as you possibly can. Tyler said the rule of thumb is about 15% of your income, which is great. But understand, as we get older, if you want to try to have a more comfortable retirement, you're probably going to have to be more aggressive putting money away if you hadn't started earlier. So you want to get started. Tyler ran some numbers here to show you how it does help, though, regardless of how late you get started.
Yeah, Dean, and again, we hear this question all the time. People ask, is it too late for me to start to save for retirement? And the answer is always going to be no. It's never too late. You can always start and get the ball rolling that way. It's better than never starting at all. So let's say that you turn 40 years old this year and you bring home around $4,000 a month. Well, by investing 15% of your income until you retire at, let's say, age 65, so you have 25 years there, you could end up with a nest egg worth over $500,000. Now, that's $500,000. That can go a long, long way in retirement. That's great if you're 40, but what if you're 50? Well, if you're 50, you can contribute 25% of your income toward retirement until you're age 67. So really, you're starting later. You might be making a good salary. You have a good life built up here now at 50, but you've got to start looking to retirement. You can afford to maybe put away a quarter of your income, and you could have over $400,000 at that point, which still can go a long, long way in retirement. So really at that point, you want to make sure that you have a budget. You see where your expenses are going, where your income is going. Set aside money to be put away in different retirement accounts, your 401k, your Roth IRA. And ultimately, no matter how old you are, you can still do something. So you don't want to waste time. The more time on your side, the more time your money has to grow, the more compound growth can work in your favor. So one other thing, you can go to investor.gov, and that's a website that I show a lot of my clients. It's a Securities and Exchange Commission website, investor.gov, and they have something called a compound interest calculator, where you can go and plug in how much you want to save each month for how many years you want to save, and then the hypothetical interest rate or growth rate, and it'll show you over time, okay, based on how much you're investing and the interest that you're earning on it, here's what you'll have 10 years from now, 20, 30, 40, 50. And I think it's a really useful tool for investors to just kind of see how much money they'll have if they invest a certain amount now.
Okay. Good points, Tyler. Now let's look at the last one here. We're going to talk about life insurance needs. We'll have some people come in, they feel they're invested enough. They really have no need for life insurance. Life insurance isn't exciting. However, we do feel that it's a very important part of the retirement process. And we tell people, there's a number of reasons for having life insurance, but, the larger ones, I say there are usually 3 of them we want to look at. First of all, if you have a mortgage or significant debt, that's a reason for having life insurance in retirement. If you have children that are, still going to college, or they need help potentially getting through college, if you were to pass away, they would get that help. Or if you have a special needs child as an adult, you're going to have to take care of that child for the rest of their life and your life. So you want to have life insurance in place to do that. And then the third thing is while working, if you have one spouse making significantly more than the other spouse, you want to make sure that there is life insurance at least on that spouse who's making significantly more, because if that spouse passes away, the spouse who isn't making much money needs to have additional funds come in to help them. So those are really the 3 things we look at. But the other thing, too, that I just brought up earlier that's very important to look at, and that is it might not even be the death benefit as the reason for putting life insurance in place as you get older. And that might be the opportunity to have the accelerated death benefits in place to help you if you need long-term care. So I look at it, twofold. As a death benefit to address one of those 3 needs I just brought up, or to possibly have the accelerated death benefit in place to help you if you need some additional money should you have a terminal illness or go into a nursing home. So again, life insurance is not real exciting, but term insurance is one of the cheapest, sleep well at night things you can buy in your retirement. Tyler, anything else here when it comes to life insurance? And maybe you could talk a little bit about those people who are self-insured.
Yeah, Dean, we often use the term self-insured, meaning people who have saved enough in retirement funds to be able to support their family should they pass. Now, you've saved enough in retirement funds, but on top of that, if you aren't starting a family, you may be heading into retirement, have no debt, no mortgage, and you don't earn substantially more than your spouse and don't have any kids going to college, those all would be grounds for you to be self-insured, meaning that you have really no reason for life insurance at that point. So you shouldn't really because some people feel that they need it no matter what. Well, again, that's what self-insured means, just that you don't have any use for it in terms of debt, family, mortgage, different things like that, and you have enough retirement funds that it really wouldn't make too much sense to pay the premiums on it. Now, however, if you have cheap term life insurance, it's a win-win because it's probably not going to put a big damper on your expenses and different things like that. But yet it's still so cheap that you can have a death benefit for your spouse when you do pass, if you pass within that term. So really, if you're self-insured and you have enough in retirement funds and you have no debt, mortgage, not starting a family, no kids in college, different things like that, then you're self-insured and you could feel pretty confident not having to pay insurance premiums.
Okay, that's all the time we have this week, folks. See you later and hope you'll join us again next week.
We'll see you next week.
You've been listening to Secure Retirement Solutions with your hosts, Dean and Tyler Listle, fully licensed retirement specialists from Secure Retirement Solutions in Green Bay. To get more information from Dean and Tyler, contact them at Secure Retirement Solutions on Allied Street in Green Bay. Call 920-347-9888 or visit them at srsplans.com. Securities and investment advisory services offered through Brokers International Financial Services, LLC. Member SIPC. Brokers International Financial Services is not an affiliated company.